As Abby said, there's a sign up. As Abby said, there's a sign up sheet for if anyone wants to speak on House Bill 617 only, and the road naming if you choose. We'll start in 4 minutes. Okay, if everybody kind of get started, we'll get moving. Call our House Transportation Committee to order and note that we do have quorum. And appreciate you guys and ladies being here. We've got three bills we're going to go through, and waiting on Chairman Prince. He'll be here in a minute. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and do House Bill 617 that we sent out yesterday. And that's the bill that I have, and I think you'll find it very interesting as we go through it. You know, this is kind of the work of a lot of folks in the last couple of weeks that have recognized that, you know, and maybe over the last year that we need to come up with a better way, an effective way to fund freight and logistics across our state. And as we just run through here, I'll just kind of just jump through and hit the high points. Of course, it's up for discussion. I do have an amendment I want to make. But you look on line 16, we want to have a statewide freight and logistics I know we're all tired, implementation plan, whatever it means. And, it's in the 32-241, that's the powers of the Transportation Commissioner. This is a new code section for us, and so we're going to add to it in certain parts. You'll notice in Section 2 we're talking about the planning director. A member asked me about this yesterday, and they already have to do a number of things. You look down through there, developing the statewide transportation improvement program, strategic plan, and we add in line 28 the statewide freight and logistics implementation plan. You look down there on Section 3, that's new language about what we want them to do and how we need to go about it. We want to make sure it does include plans that they are submitting to the state, and so we all know. I think some of this is a we need to know bill, which you'll like. The statewide plan on line 42 shall be based on the 20-year projection, because as these members know, this is the long range that we have to work in and think about. You look on line 45, we talk about, foundational investments. What are we going to do to make sure their foundational investments are made to the existing transportation system we have? We use the word catalytic investments in line 47. These are capacity adding projects that will mean more opportunities for growth, not just maintenance. Innovative in line 50 means operational improvement, new technology, new maintenance approaches that can help us. And we thought we were talking about it the other day, and these could be something as unique and as futuristic thinking as connected vehicles that could improve traffic flow through automation. We'll have to do work with that without adding lanes, which we all know is tremendously expensive. And then you look at line 54, it shall incorporate performance indicators, so we can look at it and know what's going on. We go down through there, you look at, see where in line D, we talk about the plan shall take into consideration and place emphasis on projects and programs that improve transportation in some economic zones. You look at 1, International Ocean Trade Zone. We know where that is on the coast. The inland port zones, we've got 2, we'll have more. The Commercial Industrial Impact Zone, read within 5 miles of a warehouse that is larger than 200,000 square feet, as we know what those are doing to local traffic. In line 66, it's a we want to know. By February 15th of each year, the director shall provide House and City committees with report, where are we at? The budgetary proposals that we need to do these things, the status of the program delivery, and the status of the critical projects and available funding for the long list down through widening interstates, non-arterial roads, interchange, all that good stuff. And in a minute, what I want to do at the end of line 82, I want to add projects of significant economic impact to that, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And you look in 4, we're talking about the planning director and what she needs to do. It's currently she. And in Article 4 and Section 5, is why what we do is important. And it talks about freight and logistics and what it means to our state, and it goes through it. And then the 2050 program, which we call it, we talk about it has a fund on line 118. And so the money that we can create or have the opportunity to create through Fed, the statewide dollars that we may come up with in the future will be in this 2050 program fund to enhance the projects I listed on the 2 pages before, like back on line 73, all those things. And so, and just saying that I know I need now to add that to line 135 also. And so I think it's a beginning of a plan that we're throwing out there to see where we can go to make sure we are funding freight and logistics things also. We've studied this thing for 3 years. We know there's needs. We know there are things we need to do. I think this is our first shot at out there to see what we can do to make a difference. And be glad if any committee members have any questions or suggestions, and be glad to hear from you. See none. Okay, so at this moment, I need to have a motion to pass. Motion to pass. A second. Okay, gotcha. Thank you. So I have an amendment I need to make. If we'll look over on line 82, and again on would be line at the end of line 135, to add on line 82 it'd be H, projects of significant economic impact, and then the same on at the end of be number 8, it would be the same, projects of significant economic impact. Any discussion on those ideas? In motion?
I'd make a motion.
Okay, we got a motion to accept. A second? Okay, thank you. So now we'll vote on 617 as amended by the committee. All those in favor, aye. Any opposed? Thank y'all. Thank y'all for working on that. There's Chairman Prince. He has the most important thing today. Well, maybe not. Chairman Meeks says not. Chairman Prince, thank you for carrying our road naming bill. We appreciate you doing this in the past. You've done a great job with it. So if I can, we'll turn it over to you. And we'll recognize you for House Resolution 256. It's on your table there, 393840S.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and truly it is a honor to be able to present these road and parts of highway dedications as a part of the state. A lot of members have submitted these, and I congratulate them for recognizing these individuals who have gone on and done some great work. And so what we have in this resolution, and members, you have a hard copy with you there. There's actually 10 different sections. But if you go from 1 all the way to 10, all the way through 9, it's the individuals. So basically we have in this resolution 9 namings. Some are roads, some are bridges, and but section 10, if you can just focus there for right now, that's what I'll sort of highlight. I'm not going to read everything to you, but I just wanted to highlight at least the 9 that have been recommended to the committee, and we'll go from there. So if you look at the part 10, there's going to be an interchange in Tift County dedicated to Sophia Ruth Fisher. There's also going to be a bridge off State Route 39. That's over in Clay County. Be named as the John E. Brown Bridge.
Excuse me. Could I interrupt? Could you pronounce the name of that creek, Mr. Chairman?
I wave. If someone could help me,
We can throw out a lifeline on that one.
Well, I'm not the Chickamauga.
I'm just teasing you. Go ahead.
Chickamaugas. Okay, well that's close. Thank you, Mr. Chair. But then I go on. Then there's going to be a bridge again off of State Route 190. That's in Meriwether County. Meriwether County for Sergeant Eddie Thomas Taylor. And then there's also going to be a portion of State Route 138 in Clayton County, and that's going to be dedicated to Dr. Barbara Pullman. There will also be a portion of State Route 138, and that's also in Clayton County. It'll be dedicated to Jeffrey E. Turner. And there's another portion of Highway 78, and that is in Haralson County, and that'll be dedicated as the Mayor William Pete Bridges Memorial. Then there's a portion of Georgia Business Route 10, and that's within Wilkes County, and that would be known as the MLK Memorial Drive. And then the last one is is portion of State Route 57, and that's over in Johnson County, and that'll be dedicated as Deputy Emery Rowland Memorial Highway. And those are the 9 that were presented to us. As most of you know, the Senate's gonna, send some things over later, so we will do another one later in the session, but this right here should get us through Monday, the crossover day. Subject to any questions, Mr. Chairman?
So if you have any questions, I just have just 2 comments, Mr. Chairman. We must thank Josh Waller, for getting the conflict letters out in a very hasty manner. Oh, he has
Abby Conrad is the one who makes that happen.
Abby?
So
thank
she
you,
is-
Abby. Let's give Abby a hand.
Yes.
We appreciate you. Thank you, Abby, because that does take a lot of investigating, I know. And, we can't say for sure without Abby Day. She makes this effortless, y'all. I mean, and just when I called her yesterday in a panic, she goes, "I got this." And I said, "Go, girl." I appreciate you very much. Also, committee, we'll vote on these in just a moment. When Chairman Prince gets up to do this, stand up. You're the key to make everybody else in the room stand up in recognition of these folks. And he tells a little bit about each one. It's a very somber and moving moment. And so let's just make sure we all jump up, and so everybody will follow us when we do that. So we've heard the substitute to House Resolution 256. Do I hear a motion to pass? We got a second? Second. Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Prince. Okay, next up, Chairman Meeks, 189. If you'll take the center stand there. Chairman Meeks, are you about making records?
I prefer not to be one
Whoops.
making records, but
I tell you what, guys. So we made the record for the longest meeting, and now we've had the most send backs to the committee from the Rules Committee. I told Chairman Smith that, and he just kind of grinned. But we appreciate you working very hard, Chairman Meeks, on this, and working with lots of different people. So I've asked you, if you will, kind of tell where we were and then where we're at today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. And Mr. Chairman, I do agree with you that Chairman Prince did have the most important piece of legislation today, honoring great Georgians. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, I bring back to you today LC 3838S. It's the supplemental that we will be working, or substitute that we'll be working from to House Bill 189. So where we started on the first version of this piece of legislation was all commercial traffic having the ability to load with a 12.5% variance from 80,000 pounds, taking them to 90,000. Where we have moved to now is limiting the 12. So what we've done is gone back to a 10% variance on 80,000, taking the maximum limit on that's off of interstate. Now remember, these weights do not impact the Dwight D. Eisenhower interstate system. These are state and local roads. So what we've done is we've gone back to the original language in the current code and gone from a base weight of 80,000 with a 10% variance for a maximum of 88,000 for the groups of individuals, or the lines 19 through 28 spells out, or through 29, through 31 spells out who was eligible to run. So currently, if they are running under a 5% variance, currently at 84,000, same group would be allowed to run under a 10% variance at 88,000. It's very important to remember that, or to recognize that the governor's executive order allowing a maximum limit of 95,000 will expire at midnight on March the 10th. So come March 11th, we're going to have trucking industries and businesses in our state that will no longer be able to haul what they were hauling the day before. You've heard testimony from businesses on how important that is. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions the committee might have.
And, Mr. Chairman, I'll also note lines 47 through 48, you maintained that the tractor and trailer certified to meet the weight allowable by the engineering,
Right, Mr. Chairman.
and that in section 2, you have increased the penalties.
Right, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, let's open up for questions by the committee. Number 26.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just have one quick question for you. Are you feeling like you're maybe suffering from fatigue from the carrying the weight of this bill?
It has been hefty. But I appreciate the opportunity and indulgence of the committee and everyone that we have worked with to get the bill this far.
All right, thank you.
And we should say, aren't you cute? Number 2. That's Mr. Prince.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You stated that March 10th, and that just came to, so basically on March 10th, and I'm thinking that even this legislation gets out of here today, it won't go all the way across. They're going to have to go back down to the 80,000.
To the 84,000 with the current
84,000
5%
with the
variance,
5%.
yes, sir.
So that's going to happen.
Right.
Just because of the timeline.
Because of the expiration of the
Okay.
executive order, yes,
Thank
sir.
Let's see, number 8. Is that
That's me.
Mr. Newlewitz? I'm sorry. Thank you.
Hello. I've been reading through this, I've been thinking about this, and I was thinking about the discussion we had earlier in this meeting about how we are thinking about capacity and innovation and how we're moving forward as a state with freight and logistics. And my concern is that we're trying to look to the future, but that the reality with 189, even in this current incarnation, and I appreciate all of the work that has gone into this. I appreciate all of the compromises that have been made, but I'm still concerned that the fiscal reality is that the fiscal repercussions of this bill are going to be such that we are going to be putting Georgia at risk of setting aside the progress that we've made because we know that there are going to be added costs for maintenance for our roads. And so we're going to be putting ourselves behind when we're trying to leap ahead and make a lot of progress. That's a concern that I have. And I know in the second meeting we had on this bill, I asked about whether or not that substitute addressed the concerns of GDOT. Does this bill address the concerns that GDOT has? Because I'm concerned as we talk about freight and logistics, as we plan for the future, that we're going to be putting ourselves in a position we don't want to be in that's going to make it harder for us to launch these innovative ideas that we're going to be planning for.
Well, I think it's important that as we look to the future, that we also look for ways to fund bridge and road repair in rural Georgia. Had a great conversation with Chairman of Appropriations Matt Hatchett, and working toward finding additional funding within the appropriations bill of 24 for additional bridge repair. In terms of whether or not this addresses all concerns of DOT, I reached out last week asking for some feedback, some suggestions. I didn't get that. We've continued to try to work with all parties involved to get a more workable solution from where we were. Have to remember, we were running at 84,000. The governor's executive order went to 95,000 and will expire, if I'm not mistaken, right at a 3-year time frame. So within that 3 years, we have been running at 95,000. So, and this is bringing us back. We came back to a 90,000 pound on the first sub or on the first bill, and then we're coming back down to 88. So we're trying to make sure that we facilitate in a way that we can continue to move freight across rural Georgia, because you got to face it, that's where we're talking about. The 88,000 puts us on par with Alabama, with Florida, and with Tennessee, across, near our state line. So it helps in the facilitating of product in that area.
Now, talking about that 88,000 pound, are these trucks at 88,000 pounds going to be allowed to drive on the federal interstates?
No.
So we are still going to have.
We cannot affect the weight limits on the Dwight D. Eisenhower interstate system.
Right. So I think that our cities and counties probably still have a lot of concerns that I would personally think are valid about all these trucks being on the local roads.
I think we have to remember we do have containers moving through communities that may be at a higher weight than what we're currently running. We've run it for 3 years now. I go back to, we've got to find ways to make sure we're trying to provide more funding to rural Georgia. And I've had conversations with Chairman Jaspers, particularly in some of these areas. I mean, we know and we understand. I've had lots of conversations with counties and cities, and a lot of them in my area of the state. You know, how do we fix some of the roads?
Right.
So it is up to this body or the General Assembly and making sure that we're trying to provide some additional funding to those areas.
Is there any legislation to that effect?
As I mentioned, I'd spoken with Chairman Hatchett about trying to do something in the 24 appropriations bill.
All right, and I guess we'll be hearing more about that as the session proceeds. But so we don't know. So we all agree we would love to see more funding for rural roads and bridges. I agree with that completely. But well, if this bill passes, we know that there's going to be more of an impact on these local roads and bridges. We don't know that we are going to get that additional funding.
Well, I would suggest that as this bill works through the process, crossover days Monday. We have a long way to go. We have an appropriations bill to do as well. So
Right.
we will work toward that resolution.
Thank you.
Mr. Hawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chairman Meeks. I wish back in the day when I was running track, I could have you on a team, man. you've been back at it over and over, so I appreciate it. Even coming back and revising some of this, I was curious. Had any of the when you went back to advise or at least to adjust the rates to make it so that it's certainly more on par with where the state was moving beforehand with that 84,000. Where, I guess, in this process of revision, had you contacted or spoken with Georgia Department of Labor to see whether or not their posted bridges or roads would still be able to at least hold up given the reduction in weight?
I have not asked that question, no.
Okay. And the only reason I'm asking that is, I do like the fact that, hopefully with the reduction in weight that, it would make for Georgia to at least be able to compete with other states in the Southeast. I just think my only resistance to that is, I know for when I'm looking at the local roads throughout Georgia that are going to be impacted by that, it's, for me, what really stands out is not the level of pushback that we're getting from like the Georgia Municipal Association of Cities and Counties, Georgia. I'm thinking about the first responders in those communities who rely on that road. And, if you have fatalities because these trucks are going separate routes and are going into areas that are, probably, we're talking about small town Georgia here, right? And a lot of these areas that are, far off the interstate. If you have a fatality, then we're requiring, or at least expecting, for local EMS to be able to get to them very quickly. And I'm not sure that having this bill without a careful conversation, with Josh Weiler or Commissioner McMurray is actually going to help convince a lot of people that those roadways, which will actually see heavier traffic, will actually be able to be accessed by first responders should there be a fatality. And I think that's just my biggest reservation, even though I do appreciate the reduction. And that's just so yeah, that's really all I have. I know that when Governor Kemp passed that executive order, that was done at a time where we didn't have a lot of people on the roadways because of the pandemic. But now, and I'm sure like if you drive through Henry County, everybody's out, right? Trucks, cars, everyone. And I just think about like the increased weight on our roads. I'm not sure whether that can be sustained unless we're told differently from the Georgia Department of Labor.
Well, I would respond by two ways. I think you made an argument that I have heard over the years to allow log trucks to run on interstates to keep them off of some rural roads. But secondly, I would suggest to you that to remember as we cut a tract of timber, whether that's 500 acres or 100 acres, timber crews can come in and be gone within a week's time. and then we're moving on. We're not coming back to that tract of land to cut again for 15 years. So it's not as though every single road that you're talking about is going to be traveled every single day with a load of logs. And I think that's important to remember. It's like a concrete truck. A concrete truck's not going to go back to the same site every day unless it's a very large project. You know, if it's a home, you know, you may go there twice or three times depending on the size or the number of yards that you're pouring. So we're not going back every day, 365 days a year on the same roads, the same track.
Mr. Smith, 24. Where's that?
That'd be me.
Yeah. Mr. Corbin. I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couple questions, if I may. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for bringing this bill. I think in the first meeting we had a testimony where I guess ACCG took a vote, took a stance on it, but that vote wasn't unanimous. There was several counties that did not support the resolution, and some of those are in my district. And I think that would answer some of Representative Holly's question about the concern for the roads down there where, and this is a county that's 75% timberland that actually supported this. So that was more of a comment than a question. But then my mind keeps going back to that meeting where the timber harvester that testified for us from Middle Georgia. And he's talking about before the governor's executive order. When he got home every night, he just didn't know how he was going to make it. I believe his exact words, I was looking for a way out.
Exactly what he said.
He could not afford to stay if everybody refocus on that conversation. To me, that made more impact on me than any I guess testimony we had that in that marathon meeting that we had.
Yes, sir. Exactly.
So, I mean, with the insurance cost and fuel cost up, I think it's just one thing we can do to help the working man. Just to live to fight another day. So, thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Number 14, it would be Mr. Gilliard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, thank you for this bill, first of all. And I'm glad through the tedious journey of all these meetings that sometimes I wasn't there. Coffee would probably suffice, or maybe some caffeine, but I want to thank you for enduring this process. We have a business right around the corner from the fourth largest container in the world in Garden City, Georgia. And we know the focus of Georgia Port Authority. You see a lot of trucks coming in and out. But the mayor of Garden City has expressed to me adamantly that they don't have the funds via infrastructure-wise right now to suffice those trucks that are coming in and out of Garden City. I see it all the time. My concern is kind of the quiet promissory for the future of possibilities in funding for funds to help with infrastructure on the roads. I think we've got to find a little deeper tool to look at focusing on how we're going to fund for those smaller municipalities that just don't have the revenue to do it, and they might not be able to take a promissory. I've looked to the left. What are we doing about infrastructure money that came from Washington or anything on our part? I think it's a great and much needed idea that as we continue to grow in port and logistics and in the economic development, we have so many men and women that are owner-operators of transporting materials, but just very concerned about that small component. I commend you for the bill. My toil is left or right. What could you say to convince the future of some funding? I know we talked about possibilities.
Well, I appreciate the question, and thank you. Again, I go back to, I think it's important that we all work together to come up with a funding solution as we look across rural Georgia and the needs that are there. I mean, I would welcome your comments and your help in doing that.
And I'll add also, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Gilliard, if you look at the bill we just passed, House Bill 617, that would fall within a economic development zone, around the port.
Exactly.
and it would be, something May needs to do. Next up, number 21, Ms. Hagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chairman Meeks, for your diligence on this bill. I know it has been an arduous process. I appreciate you sticking with it. Several members of this committee have expressed concern over how this would impact our small town rural roads, and I truly do appreciate your concern for our small town rural roads. I do appreciate that. But as a representative of several small towns in rural Georgia, and I am going to get to a question here in just a second. Over the past 3 years, where these weight limits have been at 95,000 pounds, I have not received a single call from anyone in any our city council, our county commissions that have expressed any concern over the 95,000 weight, have expressed no, I've heard no comments from them that there's been any increased damage to their roads. And I'd kind of like to echo what Chairman Corbett said, that in fact, a couple of my counties requested that the ACG's stance on this be neutral. So I guess my question to you is, have you, over the past 3 years, received any concern from your city councils or county commissioners over the 95,000 weight?
I received one call after GMA put out a bulletin or a message about the bill, and that was the only call that I received during that time. I've since received some from county commissioners and explained the bigger picture and where we have been running, and that was unknown at the time of the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Number 28. Down there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to say thank you to Representative Meeks for the hard work on this. And at the proper time, Chairman Jaspers, I'd like to make a motion that this bill do pass.
Well, I'll call on you at that proper time, but it's not right this minute. Thank you. Number 12.
Thank you, Chairman. It does sadden me. Is it not true that this bill removes flooring, et cetera, manufactured items off of the list?
That is correct, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. It saddens me, but I've always been a big supporter of rural Georgia and South Georgia and farmers in particular. So I will support the bill, but it does kind of break my heart a little bit.
Well, thank you for your comments. And the flooring industry is very important in this state, and you expressed your extreme displeasure not being able to include those in this bill. Thank you.
Number 25. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A lot's been talked about funding and appropriations, and I think the legislature's got a pretty good track record on funding transportation. If I'm not mistaken, HB 170 was $1 billion additional that went over to GDOT. So I think when we see the need, we come together and we discuss the legislation and we pass legislation to fund transportation, because we know it moves goods and people from A to B. So appreciate your work on this bill.
Thank you, sir.
Smith. Mr. Newlowitz.
Thank you. One of the things we talked a lot about at that marathon meeting was safety, and that hasn't come up really yet in a substantive way, but I wanted to just remind everyone that truck fatalities have increased in Georgia over the past 3 years. Truck fatalities have increased in Georgia over the past 3 years. This is a real thing. This is a real statistic. We know that Georgia, because the Motor Carrier Compliance Division folks told us that we are number 4th in the nation for these kinds of fatalities. We're 8th in the nation in terms of population. So that is disproportionate. So we have more deaths than we should be having. And one of the other things they pointed out, because I was just looking back through my notes, is we had 74,000 truck safety violations last year. And I just wanted to remind everyone, we're talking a lot about the funding, which is important. We're talking a lot about the businesses, that's important, but the lives are also important. And I just wanted to make that point again, because it had not come up yet in this conversation, and I do think it is important to each and every one of us here to make sure that Georgians are safe. And I just wanted to point out that I do have this concern about the safety and everything we've talked about with the increased stopping distance. We know that a lot of things have happened the past 3 years, and one of those things is that these truck fatalities have increased in Georgia.
You are correct in what was said, and I followed up with MCCD to ask the question in terms of the fatalities. The number one, the cause of accident, who was at fault, was not able to get that data, so we don't know exactly whether it was a head-on collision, a side swap, whether it was the driver of the truck or the distracted driver of the vehicle, and what it may be. In addition, I ask in terms of inspections, as you would mention, the breakdown of the violations that were found. Nothing in this bill removes the responsibility of the driver and a company to make sure that their trucks are safe on the road every single day.
My directions. Number 15, McDonald.
Hello. I want to see if I'm awake. I kind of want to follow up on the two-part here as far as the fatalities. I do have some experience in working a lot of fatalities, being a fireman for 27 years and also being coroner for Forsyth County for 16. And I would probably say, if not half, maybe even more, it was not the trucker's fault. In our fast-paced community, I watch people constantly running red lights to get somewhere. They put they think it's yellow and then it turns red and they continue on. People know that there's like a 1.5 second delay and people just keep going. So I don't, when the motor carrier division was here, I know the question was asked about how many were the passenger car's fault or the truck's fault. They couldn't answer that. Still, I don't know that answer. But as someone experienced working those, as I said, more than half I would think was the passenger car. But secondly, my concern for Forsyth County is that we have a huge landfill, which we've talked about. The waste part of this bill concerns me. The waste landfill is not mobile. As chickens, you harvest chickens, or we call it catching chickens up in our area. When you bring them to, there's a growth time for the chicken, so you're moving from chicken house to chicken house. Same with cutting timber, you're moving to different areas. But that, the landfill is always going to be there, and we're getting waste from all the surrounding counties. So that's just my only concern for the county that I represent.
I appreciate the gentleman's comments, and we have a landfill as well in my home county.
Next will be Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to point out that one point of clarity that we're missing here within the safety violations is also the locations of those violations, as well as the where were the vehicles when the accidents occurred? Are they on the state highways? Are they on the federal highways? And that's an important distinction that I'd like to see if we do get those statistics. How many of those were actually logging trucks, agriculture trucks, versus the container trucks that we're hauling probably a lot more of across the state?
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Let's see, number 2, is that Mr. Chairman Prince?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. One quick question. Do we, with the adjustment in the bill with the weight variance, how would that impact those bridges that we're told earlier that need to be posted? Would that reduce the number or help posting bridges?
I don't have the answer to that question, sir. I mean, the DOT says they would post them at 90. I don't know if that number changed when it goes
so
to
88. We should be okay.
There would still be some posted, but it would be fewer. I think is what the information I have. Number 24.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just circling back to the, I talked about the high cost of insurance and fuel, but I think we had a guy with the insurance company testify when he was here last time, and he mentioned that with the increased weights we've seen over the last 3 years, there had been no increase in insurance premiums because of the weight of the trucks. Is that not correct?
That is absolutely correct, Mr. Chairman.
Number 10, Mr. McCollum. Oh, Seaman, sorry.
Thank you. Chairman, thank you for all your work on this bill. I know there's been several iterations of this, and I appreciate you're willing to compromise. I know those folks in South Georgia need this, and with agriculture being our #1 industry, I think it's important that we have these these discussions. But I think we're at the witching hour on this. We've been discussing this for years on end, and I just appreciate it. I had one question, though. I know that the lift axle, is that prohibited, or will that be, can you still use that? And
Under,
if-
excuse me, under the substitute that we have before us, you would still be able to use the lift axle.
Okay, and that lift axle, that has an extra set of brakes on it?
That's correct,
So that
yes.
would help make that a little bit safer. I appreciate that. I also want to, Representative Holly, I appreciate your comments with regard to EMS, and I hope that if we do have another amendment, we can outlaw speed humps in this bill as well. Thank you.
Oh, my. All right. Yeah, I just want to make one comment, and I think that's the end of our questions, and we'll go ahead and vote. But I appreciate you guys. I hope I tell you enough that this is a very personal conversation with just the committee, and that's sort of how I like doing it. We've heard, as Ms. Nealowitz said, how many times did you say it? Marathon meeting? Did you say it at least 3 times, didn't you? And so, but it was. But I think we let everybody on the outside say their piece. And this was your opportunity to say your piece and ask the questions that you wanted to of the bill sponsor. But any other thing, Mr. Chairman, any other comments you'd like to make?
Mr. Chairman, I just appreciate the time that the committee has given me to present each version of these bills and the conversation that we've had, and just appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Mathis, you had opportunity. Okay, we've got a motion. Do we have a second? Second by Ms. Hagan. Okay, we'll vote by hand count. My officers will count. All those in favor of House Bill 189, LC 3838S, please raise your hand. How many? 14. Those opposed, please raise your hand. Six. Measure passes. Committee, thank you. Y'all be careful going home or staying tonight for tomorrow morning's meetings. I appreciate our meeting is adjourned.